morning and welcome to Technicity GTA. I'm Fawn Annan, CEO of ITWC, the nation's leading publisher of content serving the IT community in Canada. Well, as a trying year winds to a close, it is nice to be with you all, if only virtually. This is the 10th year we have been doing a Technicity event, but the first, when we started, it expanded, sorry about that, but the first that we expanded the focus beyond the City of Toronto, and it is a move that was long overdue. Thank you for being patient with us. We have a great program of speakers today tackling the questions that we hope are of great interest to you. It's been a tough year for municipal governments and continues to be so. They have had to manage a lot of change quickly, while citizen demands have exploded exponentially. Never before have the internal and external communication needs of grassroots government been so challenging. But as we're going to hear, municipal governments in the region have responded admirably. They are leveraging technology in innovative ways that respond to citizens' needs. Their staff's new collaborative requirements from the kitchen table and partners internally and externally to try and find ways to do more with less. We will hear about this in detail throughout the sessions. This conference would not be possible without the support of our sponsors. You're going to meet them in a bit as they moderate our 3 panels, but it's important that I call them out now. AMD, Microsoft Canada, and Rimini Street. I also want to shout out to our supporters, MISA and the CIO Association of Canada. While previous Technicity events have been live affairs, we've done as much as possible to provide interactions for you. If you haven't been to one of ITWC's virtual events this year, I want to point out a couple of things on the platform. You can start by taking the walkthrough located at the top right-hand corner, just so you can find everything. Immediately to the right, you will find the messenger box. This is one of the many ways you'll have to contribute to the conversation today. If you have a question that you would like to see posed to a presenter or panelist, go on to your Twitter account and post the question using the hashtag Technicity. If your post has a question mark, it will end up there. If you tweet without a question mark, it ends up on the Twitter wall further down the page. Just to make this interesting, if we use your question and get an answer, we'll send you a $15 Amazon gift card. And if that isn't enough, we've decided to vote the last third of the conference to a town hall. We'll all move into the town hall together, where you'll be able to participate in real time through conversation. You'll get to the town hall by clicking on the link in the messenger box or on the Technicity TV platform. Now, let's get this show on the road. I'm really pleased to introduce Microsoft Canada's President, Kevin Piesker. Kevin is a giant in the Canadian tech scene. He served as a Canadian president since August 2017 and has shown he's not afraid to take risks. For all of his vivaciousness, Kevin is also a great listener. While he hasn't been on the road as much during the pandemic, he's lived on his computer a lot. He has heard repeatedly that, pandemic aside, growing communities are struggling to keep up with the services and infrastructure. He hears about municipalities struggling to finance change or to secure personal data. But he also hears about solutions. He hears success stories about public sector organizations that are reinventing their consultation processes for a mobile-first, cloud-first world. They are shifting from manual processes to digital automation, from being process organizations to being service providers. We asked Kevin to open up the conference today, not because we hoped you'd find it amusing if he showed up in bunny ears, but because he can share stories of encouragement and serve up examples of other municipalities across Canada that are doing amazing, innovative things in the same conditions we all face. Kevin, take it away.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Technicity GTA. I'm absolutely thrilled to participate virtually with all of you. The incredible team at IT World Canada has an agenda planned for you today that is fantastic. In just half a day, they've managed to create an interactive experience with a mix of live presentations, recorded panels, and a luncheon town hall. all with the goal of exploring innovative digital strategies and tools to drive efficiency, collaboration, and security. It's going to be awesome. So let's get started. I don't have to tell the people in this room, the people who are sitting in their living rooms, in their bedrooms, at their cottage, in the car, that governments at the best of times are faced with a myriad of challenges, financial constraints. They deal with legacy systems and digital skills shortages on a regular basis. Add to that the incredibly high level of accountability to the public that can slow down projects and processes so much that by the time the project gets close to completion, it may actually be irrelevant. In the past, it meant that implementing new digital strategies and driving change was tough. At times, it may have even felt completely impossible. Then, this thing came along called COVID-19. It hit us hard, and boy, did it turn our collective world upside down. In what seemed like the blink of an eye, organizations had to switch to more remote working, and many to virtual services. It is a transformation on a scale that we've rarely, if ever, seen before. A few months into the pandemic, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella noted that we literally saw 2 years worth of digital transformation in just 2 months. And organizations of all sizes and all industries, they've had to adapt, and at a speed they thought was previously impossible. Really, it's a Darwinian type moment where those who adapted thrived and those who didn't struggled to survive. Large, medium, small businesses along, all of them showed their agility, and so did many government organizations at the municipal, at the provincial, and at the federal level. Take Brandon, Manitoba, for example. Brandon, a smaller city in the country, with departments that are quite spread out, requiring them to collaborate across facilities. When the pandemic forced workplaces to close, Brandon went from office-only work environment to 100 employees working from home over the course of just 24 hours. That scenario occurred across the country time and time again. Another example, the regional municipality of Durham. When the province mandated employees to work from home, Durham quickly transitioned its workforce into Windows Virtual Desktop, allowing them to continue to provide vital municipal services to its residents. We've seen this with countless other municipalities, provinces, and health authorities across our country, as well as at the federal level with shared services and a bunch of other departments that provide critical citizen services to all of us as Canadians. There's really much we can learn from the examples across Canada, as well as the amazing work of our frontline healthcare providers. The way that the healthcare system is pivoted and with such speed and impact, it's just phenomenal. A great example is Montreal's Jewish General Hospital. The hospital was nominated by the Quebec provincial government at the start of the pandemic to be the province's lead hospital for COVID-19 care. The hospital quickly found that the increasing number of COVID-19 patients meant that they had to expand the number of wards providing care. They had to expand the number of staff to deliver specialized care, and that staff was in very high demand. The hospital turned to technology. They started piloting Microsoft HoloLens and mixed reality remote assist technology in just 2 weeks. These capabilities meant that specialists in one location could immediately and virtually be at the bedside of a patient in need, providing specialized healthcare at scale. The clinician can connect with a range of patients, whether it's a patient in the intensive care unit in distress while hooked up to a ventilator, or a wound care patient that's required by someone who's developing pressure ulcers from protracted time in an acute care bed. By allowing specialists to be present virtually, This approach also reduced the number of people needed to be physically present and thereby reduced the exposure to medical staff to the virus while providing care of specialists at scale to help many. These responses, they demonstrate our agility. They demonstrate and have been built with the resiliency that government and healthcare providers require, not only to meet immediate needs, but also to embed approaches which allow for efficient future growth. My assessment of agility in action is based on literally thousands and thousands of examples around the globe. Those who are able to adapt quickly are doing so because of the following. They are making the right investments in cloud and technology. They understand the requirement of technology being core to the agility within their organization. Number two, learning from trusted partners on what is possible. Notice, I didn't just say supplier, but trusted partner. Just last week, in a meeting with the Chief Operating Officer of one of Canada's largest financial institutions, I was told, and my leadership team was told, Kevin, I have lots of suppliers. What I expect of you and your team is a deep collaborative partnership which holds us both accountable and which pushes us to achieve amazing outcomes. And three, they have digital awareness. They're building talent with digital capabilities, digital skills to ensure they're optimizing the full capabilities of their digital investments. On the digital skills side, we know that having the resources to upskill employees, it's a challenge, not just for government, but for many organizations. This is why we recently made our entire suite of learning modules available online through Microsoft Learn, through LinkedIn Learning, and through GitHub. They are there for you because we've talked about digital literacy for some time now in our country, but in this new world of remote everything, ensuring employees and future leaders have in-demand skills like data and AI has never been more important. And with such incredible virtual learning available, there really is no longer an excuse for us all not to be better. Over the next few hours, you will hear from various speakers. You will listen to lively panel discussions as well as have an incredible opportunity to network. And we all need more networking in this era of locked-in COVID, so take advantage. IT World Canada and the Technicity team have created a great foundation for learning, one that will hopefully spark new ideas and ways of thinking beyond today's event. That's our ask of you. Be curious, but take it forward. While there is still a lot of uncertainty right here in the GTA and all across our country, and frankly around the world, one thing that is certain is that by harnessing the power of technology to drive innovative solutions and harnessing the power of technology while sharing these best practices with one another, we will not only get through this, but we will come out stronger. If there is anything my team and I can do to support you, please do not hesitate to reach out. In the meantime, have a fantastic day of learning, and please stay well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. Well, we are off to a great start. We already have some interesting questions in the messenger that we will try to put to our presenters or put on the floor at the town hall. Well, in recent years, there's been no shortage of talk about the need for greater citizen involvement in decision making. Traditionally, the input has come from citizens by way of opinion polls, focus groups, or testimony at public hearings. Governments are now increasingly seeking to move away from one-way communication with the public to pursue more innovative approaches. They want to deliver services and service information in a more intuitive way that's easier to access anywhere, anytime. Governments like those in the GTA are innovating in the way they have conversations with their citizens. In a minute, a panel of local leaders will discuss the challenges and opportunities that go with the changing citizen experience. But first, we'll hear from Josie Scioli, the City of Toronto's Deputy City Manager, Corporate Services. To set the stage for our first panel discussion, she'll walk through some city initiatives that serve as examples of the kind of changes that can take place in the public sector.
Hello everyone, thank you Fawn for the introduction, and thank you to Technicity Organization for the invite to participate in this virtual seminar. I would like to do first our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including Mississauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people, and now is home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississauga of the Credit. Today's topic is really important. We're going to talk about utilizing technology to support our community. So what does Connected Community mean for Toronto? What is a Connected Community? Toronto's Connected Community program is about leveraging processes and technology to enhance the quality of life for Torontonians. Connected Community is about shifting our mindset and workplace culture to solve problems and deliver service to the public equitably. Toronto's Connected Community program will focus on Toronto's priorities, which are financial sustainability, housing, mobility, a well-run city, invest in people and neighborhoods, and climate change and resilience. So how do we get there? What actions are we taking? We need to think differently, which is really look at the workplace culture. We need to govern differently, which is really clearly about accountability and responsibility, making sure people understand what they need to deliver on. We need to work differently, looking at an organization that looks at policies, processes, being more data-driven, and resource differently. So building the capacity and the skills within the organization to clearly deliver on the outcomes that we need to achieve. Digital equity is a really, really important topic. As economies continue to digitize at an outstanding pace, and we saw that through COVID, there are still many citizens who cannot access the digital economy due to physical gaps in local broadband networks, also unaffordable plans, and lack of personal devices. Access to the internet is becoming an essential tool, not a nice to have, around the globe for participation in the modern society. Therefore, the City of Toronto is committed to reducing the digital divide by improving digital connectivity. The goal is to ensure that residents are connected and not divided by technology. So challenges are also seen as opportunities. Before COVID, we were faced with challenges such as growing inequity within our communities and neighborhoods, such as housing and mobility, aging infrastructure, resilience and climate change, financial challenges. Post-COVID, these challenges have only intensified, but what this pandemic has done is provide the opportunity to reset and accelerate on specific priorities, pursue the outcomes we desire at the city in a new way, a different way of moving forward. Examples of these is we have silos, like many know. Silos are not uncommon in big organizations, but there's no option to have these silos, and these are not acceptable at any table. So we have found different ways to integrate and collaborate across our service groups. So fiscal pressures, we have been having strategic discussions as we face operating fiscal pressures, which require significant reductions of our operating costs as well as capital. We will need to make some choices rather quickly and accelerate and scale and actually relook at our service levels and also decide what we can pause or stop, which is not something that we are very good at, but something that we must do. Customer engagement, we have had to come up with innovative ways to engage with our citizens outside of our usual mode of communication via polls or focus groups. We also wanted to ensure we had equity built into these engagements by ensuring we reached as much as the population that we could. For example, the city planning organization as well as our agency Creatio have gone digital for community meetings, which is something very different, and it's actually been good. It's not perfect, but it's been improving. The customer service operating model is extremely important and it's foundational as to how we deliver service. It's about consistency, standardizing the way in which we do things, the training, and making sure that what we say we're going to do, we do. And this particular structure, we've been working on it for the last couple of years, and we have actually looked at a model that could integrate citywide. So the important part about this is actually looking at our business processes, looking at the culture of the organization, looking at the integrated technology opportunities, and making sure that we're responding to the customer's expectations. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the digital vision and how we're moving that one forward. Key question to ask ourselves is, what type of digital experience do Torontonians expect? Toronto residents, businesses, and visitors want convenient and connected service from the city, like the way they do their online banking, which makes sense. The city must take steps to transform services to meet public expectations on digital experience, leveraging technology, human-centered design, creating good partnerships, and building trust and confidence. The One mobile app is a good start. We know this is how residents of Toronto want to interact with the city, similar to the way the bank app works, but it's still not good enough, and we need to go beyond payments and 301 services. So let me give you some examples of what the city has done in the last 8 to 9 months around acceleration. The digital canopy, which was providing free Wi-Fi through the City of Toronto and our technology partners to some of Toronto's most vulnerable communities. We also had Wi-Fi on wheels, outdoor Wi-Fi supported by the City of Toronto and the Toronto Public Library. And this program was at certain parks in Northwest Toronto. We also had the chatbot we launched in May using AI, focusing on COVID-19. We actually had 27,000 questions that we responded to. Shaw Freedom Device Donation, we had 500 phones and 6 months of talk, text, and data services that will be distributed through our partner agencies. The Digital Main Street, helping small businesses adopt digital tools such as e-commerce platforms and social media. We partnered with the Toronto BIA Association. So what I hope you heard today was the importance of connected communities and how Toronto is looking at it. We definitely need to invest into our digital infrastructure, and we need to make sure that we have a consistent approach as to how we deliver service through our new operating model and the digital vision that I spoke about. And I actually talked about some of the examples through COVID that we were able to do. We do know through COVID that we were exposed to government and the lack of investment that we've made in the digital side. But we also know that we are agile and that we can deliver because we definitely stepped up to it. We also know that digital transformation is all about citizen-centric and digital first. And that is what the City of Toronto is focused on. We will do very well, and this to me is about building public trust and confidence as we move forward. Digital is the new norm for the organization, and I think it's a new norm for many organizations out there, even outside of being government. So all in all, I'd like to say thank you to Fawn, the Technicity organization, my fellow municipalities here today listening to this, as well as some of the technology leaders out there and the businesses that are also watching this today. So stay safe, stay healthy, take care.
Thank you, Josie. I'm sure the panel will be drilling down into some of those points. But before we get to the panel, we're going to share with you the first of 4 examples of great IT innovation that is taking place across the region. Some initiatives, like the Whitby Fire Tablet Command Project, won awards at MISA competitions. Others, like a project in Orangeville, are Canadian firsts. They all demonstrate that the innovative spirit is alive and well. We open our Leading the Charge profiles with the 2020 MISA Award winner, the Whitby Fire Tablet Command.
Digital transformation. Everyone's doing it, including some of Ontario's biggest municipalities. But installing cameras with artificial intelligence running underneath the hood to prevent clusters of people from gathering in public during the pandemic, or attaching sensors to municipal vehicles to improve tracking, is easier said than done for cash-strapped municipalities. Join us as we highlight 4 municipalities that are leading the charge when it comes to digital transformation, and pick the brains of the municipal officers and industry experts who help bring these projects to life. During a trip down memory lane, Van Riviere recalls his time as a chief officer for a fire department in the U.S. He says it was common for eyes to roll when new solutions were introduced. Who needs these gizmos, everyone thought, and it often led to one of the biggest pitfalls when it comes to implementing new tech in a fire department. Today, Riviere is the CEO of Tablet Command, an incident management software firm based in California. And when it comes to digital transformation within emergency services, he rolls his eyes no more.
And every fire chief in North America has a pile of technology that they bought that's never been adopted. And the guys that are doing the work make fun of them every day when they come to work about this, and we get it. Well, what's this new thing that the chief wants? It really is important that these solutions be focused on the users as opposed to something that may look attractive in an office environment.
The needs of a firefighter responding to a call are much different than someone working in an administration behind a computer, he says. They don't want to type on a keyboard, they want as close to real-time data on their equipment as possible, and they want that information fast. About 3 years ago, this point was hammered home during a user group meeting with Richmond Hill's Fire Department, another client of Tablet Command. Deputy Chief with Whitby Fire and Emergency Services, Mariano Perini, attended that user meeting and liked what he heard. Shortly after, Whitby became Tablet Command's second customer in all of Canada next to Richmond Hill.
So the impetus of the project goes back to probably about 2015, 2016 as part of our 5-year work plan. And the purpose was to be able to have a bit more of a seamless sharing of information through the CAD system. Our current system was once our crews were notified, they would have to manually look at a screen to get information for the call and manual map updates.
In the past, Whitby firefighters would receive a call from dispatch, alerts would go off in the station, and a single screen would display basic details from the call. That was followed by a printed page. Yes, printed, with a map on it. Firefighter John Harrison says there wasn't even an en route map to follow to reach a destination.
And before leaving the station, the driver, or in this case the platoon chief, would have to go to the map book, map out his route in his mind, and then respond to the call from there. There was no en route map to follow like we have now with Tablet Command. We were basically in the dark ages 2 years ago, and now the advanced tool that we have in Tablet Command has changed the job of this position as a platoon chief, as well as to all the responding units, that made our job much safer.
Whitby's firefighters can also rest assured that if they're responding to a call where connectivity is poor, even in 2020, this is common, the iPads running the Tablet Command software will work. Not only that, but the solution can create a Wi-Fi network mesh around the vehicle with a range of up to 500 feet. The fire department says that they quickly discovered that a crucial ingredient to make the solution work was the purchase of LTE-enabled iPads with GPS. The future's looking bright for the Whitby Fire Department, and with a strong, innovative foundation via Tablet Command, additional layers of data are expected to be added over the years to further assist the brave men and women responding to people's worst day of their lives.
Now on to the panel. This panel, like all our panels, is composed of elected officials, senior technologists, and private sector companies interested in the public sector space. We hope this creates a mix of perspectives that allows for a deeper exploration of the issues and delivers value to the audience. Let me introduce Craig McAreth, SVP Global Support with Rimini Street. Take it away, Craig.
Thank you very much, Fawn. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Craig McAreth, the Senior Vice President for Global Support here at Rimini Street. We've got a fantastic panel for you today, and we're going to step through and let everyone introduce themselves. Before we do that, a little bit about me. I'm responsible for global support here at Rimini Street, and we're providing an alternative to paying expensive maintenance for Oracle and SAP clients out there. Includes support for customized code. We have engineers in 17 different countries. And the fastest SLAs in the business with 10-minute guaranteed response time on critical issues, and 2.5-minute is our average at the moment. So we've been very successful in providing support to clients around the world, but at this time in our history, very, very proud to be providing support to those who provide essential services. Since March, the traditional consultation and communication with a citizen has changed. The COVID-19 crisis brought new needs for digital government services and more demand on existing services. Developers in governments were mobilized and engaged in designing new apps and services to help in the fight against COVID-19. Some of these new services include delivering food and other essential items to those most in need by optimizing the entire supply chain via digital government services. We have to talk about the impact of the pandemic, as it has accelerated many digital government efforts and those in the private sector. But there are lots of efforts around the efficient use of citizen data in decision making that have helped develop independently of the current situation. So adaptability is really the hot word right now for measuring that success. So with that in mind, I'd like to go around the table and have each of the panel introduce themselves. Maybe Sandy, we could start with you.
My name's Sandy Brown. I'm the Mayor of Orangeville, Ontario. Orangeville is located about 50 kilometers northwest of Toronto. We're a regional economic hub here in Southern Ontario.
My name's Matt Patrician, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Query Inc. And we're a startup out of Burlington, Ontario, and we've created a new channel for citizens to engage with their cities using their smart speakers and virtual assistants.
Hi, I'm Michelle Holland. I am a director in cities at PricewaterhouseCoopers, but formally I may be drawing from my experience. I was city councillor with the City of Toronto for 8 years and led the innovation portfolio.
Jeff Libis, Vice President of Sales for Livable Cities. We're a technology company based in Halifax, Nova Scotia that specializes in leveraging the location of the streetlight to enable different types of smart city applications to extract additional value from that infrastructure.
I'm Cyrus Tranny. I'm the Chief Digital Officer for the City of Hamilton. We are the 10th largest municipality located on the west side of Lake Ontario, and we have a major transportation hub and technology and innovation sector within the city. My portfolio also includes open data, digital transformation, and smart city solutions.
All right, well, thanks to all the panelists for joining us. We've got some really interesting questions here, so we're gonna jump right into it and see where we go. Has the demand for municipal services crept up or fallen back since March?
I mean, we can speak definitely for Toronto and the GTA. We're seeing it completely expedited, and it's great to see. I mean, from my time, you always worry about anybody that's left behind or isn't digitally enabled or digitally connected. And now we're seeing it fast tracked. So we want to make sure that people aren't left behind and the citizens not, but at the same time, citizens are definitely demanding this new digital format.
Previous outreach to residents was, in-person meetings or telephone. This idea of Microsoft Teams or Zoom meetings, I think, is fantastic. It really allows us to connect better with our residents. It also allows us to connect better with staff. And I think the meetings internally, where you can have a snap meeting, with 3 or 4 people and really, have this face-to-face engagement, I think it's fantastic. So it's a COVID silver lining that is helping our community for sure.
I'll reuse that phrase, the COVID silver lining. I like that one. So, I think it's also breaking the ice for people if they haven't really used these services before, getting online, using the services. Now that they've done that and they've broken through that ice, they're probably going to keep coming back and back again. I mean, has that been other experience what people have seen?
Citizens being at home on the internet, familiarizing themselves with what's available through their city portals has really opened up their eyes and has generated or driven a need and a demand for new data, new information. You know, in the context of what we're able to do, like deploying a radar sensor on a streetlight and provide additional data around the safety of neighborhoods, so parents can go on and see what, you know, how many cars are traveling down their street, how fast those cars are going, to really empower them to feel safer about their neighborhood, and limit the amount of taxation on the people that would normally have to answer those questions.
I see the traction that we're getting on the city's open data portal. I just got a report this morning that we've hit a millionth view of our COVID-19 results that are displayed in real time through census tract data through our GIS solution, as well as our open data solution. We just had a city survey, so we've launched all those data sets that came out of that city survey on our open data. So we have very engaged citizens. They're adopting the technology, and they also want to be informed. And keeping informed about COVID has, you know, driven huge amounts of traffic to city websites and the other communication channels that exist within the city, which I think is all good because it's driving that adoption for future use cases as well going on post-COVID regardless.
Yeah, congratulations on that milestone. A million hits is a huge number to reach. So let's keep on that theme then, communicating about opening and closing of services and the availability has got to be a challenge, right? I mean, you're not sure what people are consuming. Maybe they're looking at blogs or maybe they're looking at social media. What sort of innovations has people on the panel developed in support of COVID-19, or that you feel is fueled by that need?
That appetite for data really showed itself with these dashboards that municipalities were putting out. And in looking at the one that Johns Hopkins University put out, providing access to open data and analytics through the pandemic, millions and millions of views. And I think Time Magazine just named it the greatest innovation or invention of 2020. And that's a open data dashboard. So that's really exciting, I think, for where cities can go with their open data and providing data and analytics. One of the things that we recently did was open up those number of cases per health region or county in the United States through Alexa and Google Assistant. So you could ask, you know, for information about cases right on your smart devices. And we've seen a really big uptick in use of that.
What I've found through the whole COVID experience is that the collection of data, when residents can see it through an open format, and then also when our senior leadership or bureaucrats are actually using that data to help residents, it's actually a feedback. So it's a sharing of data, and they're seeing it back into their communities and they're seeing it back into themselves. So I find that residents are more apt to share their data if it's returned to them. So I've seen a much more deeper understanding of data and the collection of data and how that's utilized in better decision making and enhancement for the community.
We've seen a real evolution, a kind of a driver around wanting better data, faster data, more near or real-time data, generally just the quality of the data and what they expect from their vendors is definitely increased over the last 8 months.
So we've heard a lot of really great examples of where things have worked. Let me flip that question around the other way. Has there been challenges that you face, things that have not kind of fallen together? I'm sure many in the audience are thinking, wow, I wish we kind of had that million hits and, you know, the residents participating in those sort of things we've heard of. What are the kind of the things that you guys hit, the hurdles that you had to overcome?
We see some teething pains, right, with some of these technologies where in the past, you know, something as simple as you have a form that, oh, the standard process was print it out, sign it, scan it, and send it back. Now everyone working from home, you start to develop these cracks in what were processes that worked well, and they might be simple internally when you're all together, and, you know, they've never been thought of as, oh, we need to digitize that because we're going to have, you know, 40% of our workforce or whatever that number is working remotely. So I think not maybe so much a failure failure, but it just showing you cracks in your current processes that, if anything, you wish you could move faster on to address, but you're limited by, staffing, resources, budgets, especially with the pressures that COVID puts on municipalities. But I think all those will be good learnings to evolve service delivery and digitization of processes, both internally and externally.
What this has exposed is a weakness, certainly in the rural areas, about robust ultra high speed internet. And you folks have heard of the term SWIFT. There's an organization here in southwestern Ontario that's trying to push rural internet. A lot of people think it's a necessary and essential infrastructure, which I think it is. I think it's become that in the last 8 months, delivering educational programs, and of course allowing people to work from home is now critical. So it looks like all government levels are getting on board with this idea and throwing some significant dollars at it.
All these things have floated to the top, never mind, work from home, education from home, remote learning. And really, I think there's that focus of what can the city do to facilitate, either with partners or with the government, to move that digital connectivity needle. And again, one of those huge maybe silver linings to COVID to escalate the expenditure and the catalyst for that type of connectivity.
So now we've kind of made these changes. We've made the move. I know we've got a lot of clients in the healthcare sector, and they've been talking to us about the huge increase in the use of telemedicine, for example, and what that could potentially do for the future. Any examples from this team about how we build on the transformation that COVID has allowed?
I can speak to some of the Internet of Things ideas that we've been talking about here in Orangeville. I know Jeff's talking about street lights and other infrastructure that we're now able to collect data from, and certainly how we run our facilities, our buildings, how we heat them, how much electricity comes into them. We had a vendor approach our town during COVID, offering an AI camera system, which would allow us to count the number of people at a skate park or count the number of people in a community garden in order to keep the COVID number correct. Let's hope COVID is over a year from now and we don't have to talk about these things again, but there's some very interesting and innovative things that are going on right now as a result of COVID.
I'd like to echo some of Sandy's comments. Another silver lining from the COVID experience has been, I think, out of this crisis has born quite a bit of innovation, or at least some openness from our customers at the cities to embrace some of these new technologies and to look at some of the value propositions that they bring. Street lights are, the application of sensors at the street light is a fairly new thing. There's a bit of a learning curve to go through, and we've actually been very surprised at how open and how much we've been able to work with our city customers over this period during COVID to enable some of those applications.
Question for the whole group. What would you think would be the one piece of advice you would offer to municipalities that would help them ramp up that citizen experience? And Matt, we'll start with you.
We all kind of understand the importance and need for opening up data, maybe open by default, or even going further by opening, with a purpose. And I really think that if municipalities open up their data, and not only just open it, but make sure it's in the apps and the solutions that their citizens are actually using, that will help improve engagement on the sort of the apps that they're using, and you might get more uptake on people ingesting that information than trying to get them to come to your platform.
Thanks, Matt. Sandy?
Well, just this idea of the continual collection of data and sharing in the best way possible with our residents. That's the combination of, in our case, Data Orangeville and our new website. We were taking this information and sharing it and building upon app in Data Orangeville. For instance, right now we've got a new app to share where our improved Christmas light decorations are in town, and it's a GIS app that's telling people, instead of a Santa Claus parade, which we've decided not to have this year, you'll be able to put the kids in the car and drive around and look at some very nice displays that the town and the BIA have put together.
That's great, Sandy. I've always been a fan of strapping the kids in and driving to the lights rather than having to try and explore on foot. So it's a great suggestion. Michelle?
It's the same thing. I mean, from the City of Toronto, it's getting the collection of data and being aware of privacy issues, but collecting it in an informed way, and then using that to the best of the ability of the city. So making sure that the bureaucrats are getting the best that they can get out of that data, because you can have a lot of data, but you're not really sure how to utilize it in the correct way, and then using it in the best way to make informed decision making that enhances the citizens' lives. I think when citizens know that, they know it in a transparent and trusting environment that enhances their lives, that it's only a win-win.
Collaboration is key, both with the community, between the vendors and the customers, in this case, the municipalities. There's a lot of value to be extracted from technology that's being deployed into the urban environment today. There's a lot of information, there's a lot of data. Understanding how that kind of translates into the day-to-day lives of everybody that's involved is going to require a good conversation between municipalities, between the customers and consumers, the citizens, and the vendors, the technology suppliers. And the better and the more you can have that conversation, I think the more value you'll be able to create through the application of the technology. So collaboration is key.
All right, and Cyrus, I'm going to leave the last comment of the day for the panel for you, mate. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think I would focus sort of on that citizen experience piece, and the idea I like to share is this idea of friction. So how can we make it as frictionless as possible for the citizens to engage the way they want to with city services at the time that they want, and at their convenience. And I hate to sound cheesy and sound like this utopia of the Amazonification of city services, but I do think that that's a trajectory that we need to look towards. So we provide that value at a lower cost to the taxpayer and convenience for them to engage with the citizens' services that they require. And I think, what people don't really realize is that cities are complex beasts, and the amount of services they provide across a diverse range of user base, it just further promotes that need. Whether you're registering for a rec program, or you want to pay your taxes, or you want to have an inquiry about like a building permit, how do we make that easy, and accessible across multiple channels?
Excellent. All right. Well, I wanted to thank each and every one of the panel today for such an engaging discussion. It's been nice to spend some time virtually with you all, and we'll hand back now to Fawn. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thanks, panel. Well, Craig will be live with us again at the Town Hall later this afternoon. Craig will provide a summary of the discussion, and then you'll have the opportunity to ask questions or make comments about anything you heard. That's how the Town Hall is going to work. There will be a quick summary of each panel, followed by an open discussion of the issues raised. My friend, colleague, and CIO for ITWC, Jim Love, will be moderating the session. So we now turn to the second discussion area for the conference, collaboration, or as it really plays out, digital enablement and innovation. Few people know this subject matter better than our next speaker. Sean Slack has been leading digital transformation and digital enablement initiatives at the City of Mississauga for more than a decade. Sean has been instrumental in the development and the approval of a Smart Cities master plan that will guide Mississauga's digital projects for the next 8 years. Sean's going to give us 12 minutes on the challenges and opportunities around digital enablement. It will serve as a foundation that our panel will build on in greater detail. So, how are you this afternoon, Sean?
I'm great, Fawn. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so excited to have you here. I know you've got a lot of ground to cover, but I understand Mississauga recently passed a remote work plan that moves beyond the pandemic to accommodate a new way of working.
Yeah, we have. So we have a remote worker policy we put in place, and I'll talk a bit about the transition to working from home and how that went. But we already had a plan in place to look at a remote workforce And in this plan that was just approved by our council, we're looking at about 1,000 staff who would permanently be remote workers post-COVID. And really what this pandemic has done is accelerated a plan that we likely would have taken 2 or 3 years. And I think that's a common theme for most organizations. Things that were planned for 2 or 3 years are happening in 2 or 3 months now. And so the opportunity has presented itself. But we actually went through a consultative process with staff to understand the needs, how things were working. Quite frankly, closing your buildings and sending all your staff home to become a remote worker is not the right way to do it. And so we took some time to survey staff, find out what the needs were, the type of work environments, to come up with a profile that gave us this magic number around 1,000 staff. Yeah. So I'll kick things off. Yeah, so the remote worker is here to stay. And I think it's interesting, even from a city building perspective, developers who are building new homes and condos have to rethink the home office in a house. It is now a mandatory. It used to be the kitchen and the master ensuite was the most important thing, but now office space in a house has become a big drive around new housing. And so that's it's been interesting. And also high speed, reliable connectivity is really important. So I'm going to talk a bit about how municipalities are dealing with the collaboration challenge. The context will be obviously about the city of Mississauga and some of what we learned, but I think a lot of it does apply. I've talked to my peers across Canada and even more globally about some of the challenges. But I think the first challenge really was the speed, March, and I really take it all back to St. Patrick's Day, because that was a clear message to the world that something serious is happening because it was canceled. And it may sound kind of vain, that was one of the key things, but quite frankly, it was a serious message, and that really was the first indication. And that's really what caused many municipalities, certainly within Ontario, to close their buildings. And so that's where connectivity really did matter. And also having collaboration tools in place if you did, and having staff at least being used to using collaboration tools. And at the city, we're using Cisco WebEx. We had already mandated virtual meetings. Our leadership team, it was actually mandatory if you were to go to our leadership team, so the city manager and commissioners, to show up virtually. And that was actually part of our green plan, because we're trying to mitigate people driving to City Hall to attend a meeting with their leadership team, but also to eliminate print. So we had paperless virtual leadership team meetings, and that extended to our extended leadership team. And then as part of our future corporation, the implementation of that first phase, which I was part of, and which really has led to the post-COVID, the 1,000 remote workers, and a complete redesign of our office space. But having said that, having the experience is one thing. Having the entire corporation shift to virtual everything overnight was a massive challenge. And there was many people that did not have the confidence to set up a WebEx meeting, to leverage all the types of tools, to share content. And so there certainly was some, I would say, rapid learning. But you know what? It took probably about a month for staff to get comfortable, and then we basically had caught our pace as far as virtual meetings, how to run a meeting, and then really became effective in doing that. And in parallel to all that, we looked at our work programs, our capital budgets, and we refitted those to meet the priorities of responding to the COVID. So the response, but also then to the recovery. And in the recovery, we looked at things that would drive social and economic resilience. So continue with construction, look at programming that really had a positive effect on the community, on youth. And all of that was done through collaboration. And so that was really meant that interagency, multi-agency, and even private sector collaboration became essential for us to addressing that. So very important. Certainly, right out of the gate, concerns about security, things like Zoom bombing, some privacy concerns, and actually Zoom was a great use case because largely a consumer type product, smaller business, and even they were really surprised and came up with their own 90-day plan around security and privacy. They acknowledged, we weren't expecting this either, and they saw huge growth. But so we use WebEx, and that's our primary collaboration virtual meeting tool. That's how we run our council meetings. That's how we do our press media briefings with the mayor and primarily all our meetings, but we also use Zoom. So what we found is not every tool is going to do everything we want it to do. So for Zoom, we're using that in our courts because from a provincial perspective, that's the tool they were using. And so for litigation and hearings, so we're using Zoom for that. And also one of our committees of council, the Accessibility Advisory Committee, had really said that Zoom was better suited to the types of tools they were using to participate. And so instead of really saying, well, WebEx is our mandatory tool, we said, okay, so we listened and said, no, that makes sense. And so we adopted Zoom for running our Accessibility Advisory Committee meetings as well. And actually, when we looked at, so we are a Microsoft shop as well, and so we were piloting MS Teams, and how that would work with Cisco WebEx, but we ended up using MS Teams to collaborate with the private sector, and I'll talk a bit about that later on. But it became a real interesting opportunity to create a collaboration platform with industry. Reality hit though, so about 2 weeks in, we started to get a lot of complaints about poor performance, things weren't working right. So we started to look at some of the indicators, and some of it was the bandwidth. So we did some fine tuning on our VPN and split tunneling and diverting video over the internet and having the meetings running through WebEx. But then we started to look at the internet outage maps of the different providers, whether it was Bell or Rogers. And quite frankly, the GTA was one big orange blob. And that was another issue because Rogers, Bell, the internet service providers never anticipated that every worker, every student would go home and work concurrently. And of course, students at home, they like their gaming too. And so there was a huge challenge where the internet and the capacity of an at-home everything couldn't handle it. And so the response to that, certainly internet providers and the telcos responded. They beefed up their infrastructure. So they had to go through a rapid transformation. So that leveled out. There's still, I would say there still are some issues with that infrastructure. But for the most part, they've responded and beefed it up and things have stabilized. But certainly they didn't expect it, and it certainly caused some issues for everyone in the GTA for a couple months. So I would say that now that we're stabilized, we're getting a lot more advanced for the use of the collaboration tools as well, and that's been a really interesting learning. And I think that's really taught us that the future can be a balance of virtual and person. One of the things I want to talk about was the urgent need to be visible from a governance perspective. So our mayor and council, early in March, so on the Monday we closed our buildings, on the Wednesday we ran our first virtual council meetings. We actually didn't miss one meeting. The very first council meeting was a hybrid, so Cisco WebEx with half of council from home and the rest were in the chambers with physical social distancing and PPE coming in. And then the following week we went to full virtual. And we've never missed a meeting, and we've actually had many additional meetings and done our planning and development committees, our accessibility advisory committee. So all our committees have gone virtual, but the collaboration piece, which was actually more complex than really we anticipated, is then bringing in the deputation. So when you have outside organizations that need to come to a committee or a council, make presentations, and then how do you bring the public in to speak or ask questions? And so this is collaboration at a scale and a complexity we've never seen before. And we just met those challenges and communicated, what I've heard through our public information officer, Ivana DeMillo, is you have to communicate 7 times, 7 different ways to get the message out. And I would say that the collaboration tools and the use of social media have been absolutely necessary to meeting that challenge, getting the message out, especially with all of the change in legislation, the regulations, our bylaws, and what that meant to small business, to residents, to our workforce. And so all of these tools were foundational to managing those messages, getting the information out throughout this whole pandemic. The rapid deployment of technology and scaling up was a bit of a challenge. So by default, we'd already switched to laptops as a default. So getting a desktop computer, you had to have a business case basically to get one. We wanted everyone, and that was part of our mobility strategy. So everyone pretty much had a laptop, had VPN, was already connecting wirelessly. So the transition to moving to home was not so difficult. But certainly the logistics of getting, not everyone had a soft phone. There were still quite a few staff with desk phones, so we had to deploy, upwards of 1,000 soft phones out to people's cell phones, to their tablets, and to their laptops. And we also had to relocate our 311. So we already had mobile agents that could work from home. That was our DR plan. But we took about a month to then totally migrate our entire 311 call center to work from home. And so we took our time doing that because it was such an essential part of the city connection back to the community. So very important to get that right. When it comes to rethinking city services, though, one of the biggest challenges is the mandate of PPE, personal protective equipment. And it's something that Fawn and I had talked about earlier a couple weeks back, and we're just debating the whole issue of, how do you deliver in-person services and make sure that an employee is safe and the customer is safe. And actually during our Smart City Challenge, we partnered with the Danish consulate and with a vendor who had this tool called Front Desk. We'd implemented that in our legislative services for things like marriage license, burial permits, and so on, for things that we could do legislatively. Actually, I think burial permits actually happened after because there were some legislative changes required. And what that did was allowed people to, using their cell phone, or they could call in, or they could go online, and they could book an appointment. And and the initial idea was a customer service improvement because people would not have to wait in line. They'd be guaranteed to be served when they came in. And that's exactly what happened with our pilot project we did. And actually our wait time for the pilot project was actually a negative number. So when people showed up a few minutes early, they were served right away. And even our walk-ins, if someone happened to walk in, they were served right away because there was some capacity built. And so that allowed us to smooth the work out over the day. Our waiting rooms actually are empty. And it's an amazing transition. So what we did was we used that same experience and applied it to all of our in-person services. Everything you can think of. It's a big, long list. I got a page here. I'm not going to read it to you, but it's everything. And so basically people book an appointment, they come in, they are served immediately, and then they leave. So there's no lineups, which means that the issue around physical and social distancing is managed very well, and so the employee is safe and the public is safe. And so to me, that is a big part of rethinking services, and this is going to stay. It's an amazing customer service improvement because people can plan their day and be guaranteed when they show up, they're going to be served immediately. And the other thing it does, it actually prepares them because they have a digital connection around what are the requirements when they show up. You must have these documents. This must be ready. So there's a big component of what they need to be prepared. I think the final thing I really wanted to talk about is the second emergency, which was the economy. And certainly the health and the pandemic emergency, very significant from a collaboration perspective. But from the economic perspective, there was a real need for our Economic Development Office to reach out to business, to understand the issues, to provide tools and resources, to access the services that are provided by both federal, provincially, but also locally, things like Digital Main Street, Shop Here, immediate access to online tools and commerce. So what we did with the economic development is we launched an MS Teams site, but externally focused to deal with the sectors. So now economic development is a collaboration platform dealing with the sectors and businesses within Mississauga that allows business-to-business transactions to happen, but also collaboration across industry within Mississauga. Now it's still in its early days, but the concept of having this digital connective tissue for industry is just an amazing concept. And collaboration really that was driven by the idea of having a physical series of hubs around the city. And we couldn't do that because of COVID, so we went virtual. So I think for me, collaboration is the connective tissue that helps municipalities succeed through all this and into the future. So thank you, Fawn, and thank you for letting me introduce the topic for this great panel coming up.
Fantastic. Well, I hope you're letting it all sink in. I want to now share the second of our Leading the Charge videos. This one highlights the IT response by the City of Markham to the COVID crises.
There were very few municipalities across Canada ready to adopt some of the software capabilities IBM was handing out on a silver platter during the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic. But the City of Markham was confident in its innovative chops and leveraged one of IBM's unique AI solutions to build a virtual agent that can assist citizens during the pandemic. The city's Commissioner of Corporate Services, Trinella Kane, points out that one of the tech giant's local offices is in Markham, which certainly helped move things along quickly.
When we first heard about the opportunity for a pilot, it was probably the third week of March. We had our first meeting with IBM on March 31st, and we set to work with their team and our team and pulled together the information and made sure it was relevant to our local context. Within 3 weeks, by April the 20th, we were able to launch web chat. We subsequently decided we should do also a voice bot. We implemented that 1 week later, and we've now added it to our mobile app, which is called Access Markham. So we have really 3 channels to offer the COVID bot.
The new service uses IBM Watson Assistant for Citizens, a virtual agent with machine learning algorithms running underneath the hood, as well as natural language processing capabilities from IBM Research and enterprise AI search capabilities from IBM Watson Discovery. Together, they help to understand and respond to common questions about COVID-19. And while a pilot project for a virtual assistant doesn't carry the same weight as a smart city, municipalities should not underestimate the focus needed to sustain a project after the training wheels are removed.
People have limited resources probably to devote to something like this. And I think the advantage of a free pilot is that it's a great opportunity to get in, but you do have to be able to sustain it beyond a 3-month pilot. We really didn't know how long COVID would last, but I think this is a tool that has a lot of longevity for us, and the ability to sustain it requires resources and focus. And we've been able to devote both in those areas to keep our COVID chatbot alive and well-fed with information and current information. But we've also taken the opportunity to add a lot of other city information.
Since its launch, the virtual agent has interacted with more than 8,000 users.
People not only want to know about COVID, but they also want to know what services are open. Are the libraries open? When is my garbage getting picked up? Are the recycling depots open? So there's a lot of community-based information that, because it's changing so rapidly, people are quite interested to know what the current status is and what has changed since perhaps they last called. So we're able to keep that information current and immediately available to our residents and other community members.
That was awesome. Well, to introduce the next panel is Lawrence Etta, CTO at the City of Toronto. We've produced a Technicity conference with the city since 2011 and worked closely with Lawrence and his team over the past 2 years to add a fabulous segment that showcases the Toronto's Got IT Awards. So we're really happy to have him back to introduce the next panel. Take it away, Lawrence.
The City of Toronto is pleased to be involved in this event for the 10th year. Although 2020 has been different than any past year, as a community, we continue to innovate and enable the delivery of service to our stakeholders. As you've already heard, the push to innovate is crucial for government. Our dynamic system means that municipalities must vie for investment, workers, and knowledge, resources for which digital technology can be a magnet. By continuing digitizing, governments can provide services that meet the evolving expectations of citizens and businesses, even in a period of tight budgets and complex challenges, such as income inequality, a pandemic, and an aging population. I would like to introduce Georgian Sheridan, Microsoft Canada's General Manager of Modern Workplace. He will lead what I believe will be an interesting discussion with lots of takeaways for the audience. Take it away, Jordan.
Thank you, Lawrence. My name is Jordan Sheridan. I'm the General Manager of Modern Work at Microsoft Canada. Microsoft Canada is happy to be a sponsor of this event. We've all been moving at an incredibly different pace over the last few months, and we've seen digital transformation pick up in ways that many of us would have thought would have taken, years and years. Things are happening in months and weeks as we respond to this pandemic and try to create both the best and safe experience as we can for our employees, but also for our constituents and anybody that consumes the services that we offer. So I think it's going to be a really, really interesting discussion today. With that, let's take a moment and meet today's panelists. If you could each take a second and introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about you. Trinella, why don't we start with you?
My name is Trinella Kane, and I'm the Commissioner of Corporate Services at the City of Markham, and I have responsibility for IT, finance, sustainability, and asset management, and our Legislative Services Department.
Great, thank you. Karen?
Good afternoon, Karen Pugliese. I'm the Country Leader for CommScope, and we are a manufacturer of networking infrastructure solutions. And I lead their Canadian business, so both from a sales, engineering, and support perspective.
Thank you. And Dave?
Hi, my name is Dave Lynch, and I'm the CEO of Clear. Basically, what Clear does is provide best-in-class software to water departments and municipal water departments or water utilities to manage regulation and compliance.
Great. Well, thank you. And thank you all for being here and agreeing to chat for a little while today and share some of your experiences as we've moved through this together. So Trinella, I think let's talk, start with you, please. Talk to us a little bit about how the rapid move to remote work has changed things for your organization.
Well, it's certainly been quite a change, and I would say it happened on the turn of a dime. At the City of Markham, we have a workforce of about 1,000 workers, and they're split 50-50 between those who work right on the front lines and those who've are more administrative workers and have been working at home since the pandemic struck in mid-March. Ironically, we had wanted to introduce remote work to our organization for attraction and retention purposes, among other reasons, and really hadn't been able to turn that corner. But of course, COVID has forced us, like many organizations, to adapt quickly to that new environment and the changing parameters. I think our focus has been on productivity, on ensuring that we're continuing to deliver services to our customers, but also very importantly on health and wellness of our employees during this very tumultuous time.
Mm-hmm. I'll turn to you, Karen. What some of the challenges that you heard described in moving to remote work, what are some of the lingering specifics that you've seen customers have to deal with as they've made that shift so quickly?
I think from a technology perspective, it was really twofold. So one was, did they have the infrastructure to be able to do that? So were they able to have folks move out of an office into their home environment and still be able to maintain their security and all of the requirements around being able to access the documents that they were looking for and the systems that they needed in order to be productive in, I'll say, a safe and efficient manner. I think that was the first one. Mm-hmm. I think the second piece, which was maybe a little bit less to do with the organizations that the individuals worked for, I think the issue became one of, I'm going to call it stable internet access to the perspective of not just having the access, but in a lot of cases, especially from March until June, in a lot of places across Canada, is that remote schooling was the requirement. And so if you were a family of 4 and you had 2 individuals working, so you had 2 parents working and you had 2 children remote learning, now all of a sudden, your internet speed was crawling, and, whether it was you trying to do a Teams call or, get onto Google Classroom to be able to download and access your work, that created challenges. Mm-hmm. And so we saw a lot of customers who, it was kind of, I'm going to say one extreme to the other. They had great internal infrastructure and tools where they sent people home with laptops and they transitioned them from, sitting at a desk to working remotely at home. But then they got home and they tried to connect, And, things came to a screaming halt, and not because, their daughters were Snapchatting and TikToking, just because you had 4 people trying to access, whether it was remote learning or remote working all at once.
David, how about you? Anything to add?
When I look at the best in class, across the globe, like we have customers in North America, in Europe, in Australasia, the best ones are really asking, or looking at this as an opportunity, and seeing this as an opportunity, is where these best in class municipalities and utilities are leading. So instead of replicating their day-to-day work with 6, 7, 8 hours of Zoom and getting or Teams or whatever may be, and getting that fatigue that's associated with it, they're looking more for contextual collaboration tools. And I think that really is what the future, what this is, what COVID has been the catalyst of. And I think the security concerns need to come with that as well. And these are digital strategies. They were a huge consideration of the future for multiple reasons. So COVID hasn't changed the way we are doing it. It has just expedited it.
And to that point, Dave, what are some of the specifics where we've seen people embrace technology to help with the safety and security of both employees and of taxpayers?
When I particularly look at the cadence of how municipal workers adopt, one of the things I often say is I don't want them to adopt things really quickly. People sort of look at that as a negative. I look at it as a positive, because I don't want a new technology going in every day that's treating my wastewater from a brand new company. There needs to be, thoughtful reflection on this technology and making sure that it works.
Trinella, anything you would add on to that?
Well, and I agree with many of the points that were raised just around even the thoughtful selection of technology. Luckily, we had a platform and an infrastructure in place. They've really saved our lives as we've moved ahead in the COVID world. A couple of things I'll mention. One is, of course, we are implementing screening tools, technology-based screening tools, which will promote safety for both anybody visiting our buildings or our facilities, as well as our staff who may be attending work, but we're also applying it to staff working at home. You have to pick your spots and be thoughtful about the kind of cohesive framework of services you're going to put in place and the technology that's going to support them. We had an opportunity through IBM to participate in what was at that time a 3-month pilot for the Watson virtual assistant for COVID. So our customers are not having to phone to get information. They can get it right from the COVID virtual assistant. And expanded to include services that are either not operating or operating at different times. So it's been a real innovative opportunity.
What are some of the benefits and, of course, the counterpoint, some of the drawbacks that you've seen both within your company and within your clients on, telecommuting and just this general hybrid workforce that we now see?
So certainly, I think in Toronto, they say the average commute time is like 3 hours a day. So if you think about it, that's 3 hours of time that people got back. I think the other piece that was beneficial is that people used the technology that they already had and found ways of using that. And I would say us individually as an organization have been concerned about the amount of time that our people are working, the amount of time that they're spending in front of their laptops or their tablets. That's great that the perspective is that productivity has increased, but is it really productivity that has increased, or the number of hours that somebody has put in? And certainly, what I've heard from customers who have sales, customer-facing individuals, they have found it very, I'm going to use the word lonely, sitting at home on a regular basis and interacting with a screen. When we look at the increased amount of time spent in front of a screen and we look at the impact that has in combination with the lack of ability to engage with people outside of your household, that certainly has some negative connotations and certainly has resulted in I would say, some wellness challenges for a lot of people.
We've seen, of course, that the commute time sitting in the car is reduced greatly. It was replaced by longer work hours. The pendulum actually starts to come back now, and you see us realizing the benefit of the commute. And how do we create a digital commute now to create that demarcation point at the beginning and the end of the day to help people with that work-life balance and hopefully help to restore some of that a little bit?
We've heard before from psychologists that you need these sort of micro breaks. What interferes with that is constant notifications. So for me, the idea of a commute is negative, but it's also 40 minutes where I don't have kids ask me for another glass of water.
It's interesting to see what people are choosing to do and to reallocate and where those investments go. I know that we've had differing policies around devices and the separation of work information, personal information, what people use devices for. Through this, I think, Trinella, let's start with you. Have you seen a change in policy?
We have a focus on cybersecurity during this tough time, and I think we've really made an effort to have people use city devices as opposed to their own personal computers, just for those exact reasons. So I think we've had to rethink our own, I'll call them rules and policies that are really about protection of the public purse, but recognizing that people are putting in far more hours than you would have ever thought would be happening when they worked day to day in the office with no separation of duties.
Dave, anything to add on that one for you?
I think a lot of those challenges had been thought about before, and municipalities in particular are, as you said at the start, half your workforce, is away from the desk. So these are considerations that we've had to think about for a while. I think that's really important, because if you're using your devices as a mixture from personally, you might be having the family quiz on a Zoom, and then you might be talking in work on Teams, but you also might be using Skype. And I think it gets a bit mishmashed, which presents a big problem for IT departments. One of the things we are noticing, particularly in large municipalities, is the original view of saying this is the one system that everyone must use, and using heavy consulting budgets to sort of try and get the square peg in the round hole. It hasn't worked, and it is definitely not going to work when we need 2,000 days of implementation time and requirements gathering sessions. That really isn't going to work. So I think there needs this marrying of suiting the needs of your various departments and municipality, from parks and recs to waste to health services to finance, as well as their own individual needs.
And Trinella, I'm gonna ask you, how have you changed the way you look at information governance over the course of COVID?
Well, I think governance is always a very interesting question, and we're now focusing a lot more on data analytics and using what used to be our GIS team to really expand into sort of a data stewardship role. And identifying sort of what are the key metrics and the data sources that we're going to be using. It's a bit of a journey, I'd say, and our digital strategy helps us kind of frame some of it, but we still have a distance to go.
I see both Karen and Dave nodding vigorously during this, so we'll give you an opportunity, Karen, to share your thoughts as well.
I think that a lot of organizations have just been collecting data over the course of time because they have the ability to, right? And then eventually, really the question becomes, okay, what are we going to do with it? And why did we, what was the requirement for us to collect it in the first place? And then does that requirement still exist today?
Dave, anything to add on there?
The way I imagine in my head is I go on hikes every weekend with my kids, and they come back with stones in their pockets and sticks, and it's never one stick, it's never two sticks, it's just all the sticks you can get. And I'm like, why are you collecting these? But there's an abundance of it, so it's like, well, we'll just collect as many sticks as possible. And I think when technology was introduced first, and we could get things like telemetry data in real time, this was so exciting, when we didn't have things before. And unfortunately, although it was wonderful, now we're dealing with the hangover of that, which is maintaining and storing this data. So I think two really, really good, well-made points. And we have to, be disciplined and go on maybe a bit of a data diet, and not just constantly collect it.
And I'm going to use that to pivot to a slightly different question as we move towards the end here. We've seen digital transformation accelerate by leaps and bounds. But what are the things that you're still seeing out there that are stifling your ability to innovate at this point? Trinella, let's start with you.
Well, it's a very good question, because I think one of the things that I'm seeing is there's a certain, what I would call flatness, or kind of it's almost a sameness of living every day and working every day. And I think, the question is, how do we inspire people when they're really becoming so sort of insular? How do you create energy and excitement and really be giving people not only permission, but the incentive, I think, to start to think outside the box? And then how do you pick some spots where you're really going to make some, you make the yards you need to make to start to focus on something new? And I think, you can get into this inertia, and I think, trying to get that spark, using some of the virtual tools to, have workshops and breakout sessions and really try to energize people. It is a challenge.
Karen, anything you'd like to add on innovation and just what's standing in your way right now?
The narrowness of focus is certainly one of them, and certainly what we've tried to do in order to create that excitement or create that innovation is bringing people together from various parts of the organization to come up with, we're calling them pivot plans, but I guess you could call them anything. The future of work is going to be different, right? Some people might choose to go to the office every day because they can't work in their house because their children are all under the age of 4, and they want to be on every Zoom call. Other folks might want to do a combination. Some, maybe live 3 hours away from the major city and don't want to commute. And we've got these great virtual tools, but we haven't quite figured out yet, how do we use them to actually create engagement? And I think that's the piece that, I think I'll call it the secret sauce that's missing, regardless of what our future of work is going to look like. That is going to be a requirement.
Well, it's a great segue to my last question. How do you think we make sure that we don't lose the positives that we've learned and the progress that we have made in that acceleration that we've just talked about in a positive way? Dave, let's start with you.
The world isn't going to go back to the way it was. Like it can't and it won't. We hope that things will change in terms of getting back to being social creatures. But the way we did work before, it is fundamentally different.
Karen, your thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that, one of the things that I would say, two things that I think are here that I'd like to think are here to stay. One is this, I'm going to call it this concept of kind of self-care or family focus. And then I think the next thing is this concept of, if you're not in the office, then maybe you're not working as hard as you should be working. I'd like to think that one kind of goes away, because I think people have really shown that, that if they're given the opportunity, that's the positive spin on it, the opportunity to kind of work from home, that they'll put in the time and the effort to get the work done. And in some cases, they'll do more than they were doing when they were sitting in the office, just by having the luxury of being at home.
Thank you. Trinella, we'll finish with you. What would you like to make sure that we don't lose through this, that we build on that we've learned in the last 7 months?
So the question that you asked is really, how do you continue to leverage the best of the new world and continue to move forward? Because there is a lot of good, unfortunate, that's come out of an unfortunate, catastrophic situation. And I think, just to comment on productivity, certainly in the public sector, that's why we exist, and providing those services in the way that people have come to expect them is critical. But it is a leadership and management challenge, how to define what we need by way of productivity and how we measure it and how we prove the value of the work we're doing by the outcomes that we're achieving. But I think we've also got to manage people more effectively remotely. And they're the same people you may have had to manage more effectively in the office as well.
So thank you all for your time. Thank you all for the really insightful
thank you.
And sharing your experiences. I really appreciate it. And I think we'll hand things back over to you, Fawn.
Thanks, Jordan. That was really, really great. So I Want to let you know that if you want to watch it again or share it with colleagues, all of today's sessions are being recorded and will be available for on-demand listening on this site post-conference. So please share the link and come back and look at what you need to do. So for our third Taking the Charge video, ITWC's creative team worked with the City of Brampton to provide this snapshot of the benefits that have resulted from their vehicle tracking program. Please roll the video.
The City of Brampton in 2018 was willing to go the extra mile to improve how the municipality tracks and maintains its fleet services. Since then, Brampton has made significant improvements to a system that accomplishes just that, and is now focused on improving the experience for citizens who want quick answers to questions like, when is the snowplow coming to my street?
So this all came about in roughly 2018. The Public Works area that manages all of our fleet vehicles needed a consolidated solution for efficiently tracking all the vehicles that we use, both on-road and off-road, and then trying to be forward-looking. We also wanted a platform that we could build upon, knowing that these vehicles had sensors or were going to have sensors built into them. And in 2018, with a bit of looking forward, we went out for a solution that, started out with the basic tracking, but something we could build upon.
According to a January report from the city, fleet maintenance was the largest source of expenditures at 55% of this budget in 2019. It's grown to an average annual rate of 3.6% since 2013. Any solution that helps reduce those costs is a no-brainer. The winning solution ended up being Focus Optimization, which is now owned by TELUS. It's dedicated to vehicle fleet maintenance. Once the foundation was set, responding to user feedback and improving the experience for citizens became a major focus, says Susan Evans, contract manager for the City of Brampton.
We knew there was a requirement for residents to be able to access the information, particularly for our winter operations, and be able to see the status of what's going on in our winter events. So we created the Brampton Plow Tracker, which was originally a web-based solution, and have migrated it now to both a web-based and the app solution, which is what we are presenting this year for Brampton residents to have access to. And they can see the status of what was completed during a winter event as it's ongoing.
Internally, municipal staff are saving massive amounts of time thanks to a consolidation of resources, according to one of the city's business process advisory officials, Rita Chowdhury, who is also a supervisor of operations. But more importantly, it's making life easier for residents.
One of the good features with the Plow Track is that you can launch it right whenever you want on your mobile app, but at the same time, you're also getting snow clearing activities, which will direct you to our web page. So they can do many functions at that same time. Watch for the plow truck, see what the snow clearing activities are, and then take it back and report a snow issue. So I think that kind of convenience and that kind of user experience, internal and external, is amazing.
Brampton has been no slouch when it comes to modernizing how it delivers services internally and externally. But Evans says COVID has been a huge accelerator.
We have the same, we recognize that there's a need to change how we're operating, to move to more of these type of sharing and providing information back, and more computer-based systems to make our operations even more streamlined and efficient in how we complete our day-to-day activities. So we have been moving in that direction, and COVID is also confirming how we need to move in this direction.
Again, thanks, Jordan. Jordan and members of the panel will be appearing live at the Town Hall beginning at 12:20, so have your questions ready. We are now going to move on to talk about the important subject of partnerships and procurement. Kalyan Chakravarthy is the CIO for the Durham region. He has over 20 years of experience in private, public, and not-for-profit sectors, and from what I understand, he is a huge believer in sharing knowledge internally, regionally, and globally. Well, welcome. How are you?
I'm good, Fawn. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm good. Well, as we know, 2020 has presented a lot of challenges for CIOs like yourself. How significantly has your job changed between today and a year ago?
I think the biggest change that happened to is I'm talking to this computer more than my wife. So I think that is the biggest change that I see.
Well, you're going to set up a conversation on partnerships. So we really appreciate you being here. We really do. I give you the full control of the virtual podium.
Okay, thank you. And when I was hearing the other panelists as well as the speakers, I think one thing that we see is there is a lot of things that has been happening in the public sector, especially in the municipal sector that we are talking about. And when you see these things happening, I don't think that this was just possible because of the teams, the individual teams that they have been doing. And when we do a project or when we are successful in some venture, we talk about stakeholders. We talk about our partners. And when we talk about stakeholders, we mainly talk about two people. One are the internal employees that we are really proud of. And the second, the residents or the citizens that we serve that we want to really make a difference in. But I feel that there are four key pillars that we always forget that are there and that can make our job easier, especially as the IT leaders, as the municipal workers. It will make our job much more easier if we focus on these four key pillars. And I wanted to share, these are my thought process. I think people will agree, people will add some value to it in the panel. But let me take you through the four pillars that I think. First are the municipalities. When we do in MISA, when we meet in MISA or any other thing, I feel that there are two key things that for the municipalities that I believe in. First is we are more similar than dissimilar. And the second is we don't compete, but we complete each other. So when I talk to all the municipalities, all the leaders, when I came into the municipal sector 3 years ago, a lot of people told me, okay, we don't talk to them. There is no collaboration that is happening. But one thing I realized when I reached out to people, they're really ready to help. I think all we have to do is reaching out. So in last year, in 2019, we did a GTHA IT leaders meeting. We had it at Durham, almost there were 20 odd people, and most of the people that are attending in this conference might have been there. So 20 odd people attended it, and we shared some common pains, common challenges, and common successes that we were having, and how we can learn from each other. After that, I think we made it as a quarterly affair. We started to make it as a quarterly affair. And next we met at Peel, and then the COVID hit and it stopped. But I sincerely think that we should rejuvenate it so that we can share our successes. And if there is anything, if I can beg or borrow from other municipalities to make it good at Durham, that would be a great thing. And I have any problem that I have, I reached out to York, I reached out to Peel, I reached out to Mississauga, Brampton, anyone, and they were really ready to help. So I feel that one of the key pillars for success in collaboration as well as partnership is municipalities. And what this also does is as we have similar problems and we are addressing the similar challenges, it really helps us in a way that where we don't have to reinvent the wheel. If somebody has already done the hard work, why not lift it and why not use it so that we can reduce the time of going to market, as well as we can do it with a less amount of dollars. The second ones, and another important pillar that I see are our vendor partners. And I carefully chose that word, vendor partners, because they're not just vendors or they are just partners. They are a combination of it. They are vendor partners for me, because I feel that they are an extension of our team. Of all the municipal teams, they are the extension of it. Every success from a technology perspective, I can only talk about technology. Every success in the technology sector, in the municipal one, has been possible due to another vendor partner, whether it is about a service, whether it is a product, or it is just the boost of resources that we get from these partners that help us achieve our goal and look good and serve the community in a much better way. So I feel that like having a good collaboration among these partners is very important. And like I have one dream where we can have all the municipalities will have a single way of sourcing these vendor partners so that like we can leverage each other partnerships rather than going through this whole procurement like everybody would like to buy on their own. And I do understand from a procurement perspective that like there are a lot of rules, regulation, policies that are there that we have to overcome. But there is no policy, there's no regulation that if we all sit together, we would not be able to overcome and make it easy for everything so that like this ecosystem is tightly built in and we help each other out. The next one that I want to talk about are the not-for-profit organizations or the different governmental agencies that are there. And when I talk about these governmental agencies, there are too many to list. So I'll take a couple of examples that I have recently worked on, which have been really useful, like OCE. They have been a great partner to us. Like they are coming on board to really help us to really say, what are the new innovative things that we can do in Durham, where we're talking about a 5G testbed or any other these kind of proof of concepts that we can do in the technology. They have been a great partner. And the different board of trades. The different board of trades are like really important partner in every municipality, in my opinion, because they work well with our, like I can give an example of the Durham Region Board of Trade, and like who's working very closely with our economic development team in West Durham, and they had great successes. Like if you look at our website, there are great successes that West Durham has done that is solely due to this working with these not-for-profit or other governmental agencies. And like this really helped us to take our work and then like see what are all the partners who we can bring on board. And this helped us to really achieve some great things. Then the last but not the least are the colleges and universities. Like Durham, we are fortunate enough to have great colleges and universities like Durham College, Ontario Tech Universities. And a partnership with them is really helpful because if you want to design a future city or a future region, you would like to involve the future residents. These are the students, these are the young minds that will really look at it, because from our side, we can come and say, hey, mobility is the next way to go, or the smart home is the next way to go. But like, how do you use it? And what is the best way that they would like to interact with the region, municipality, or a city would come from these young minds. So that's where having a partnership would be a great fit with the colleges and universities. And the best example that I can give for that is a thing that we launched, an initiative that we launched called as City Studio. And in City Studio, what we did is we really kept it open. We did not put in any boundaries to it and said, if you are a student in any of these universities or college, and if you have a bright idea that you can work with the region to really help in making the municipal services better, we would like to fund. We would like to work with that particular student and the funding as well as the college to really make it happen. And there have been at least 8 to 9 cases. We launched it like last year, and there are already 8 to 9 different projects that we are doing with both Durham College and Ontario Tech Universities to make these things happen. And these success stories really make me believe that like we as together, like if we can form that ecosystem, it will be helpful not only for one particular thing, but like we are all helping each other out. So to really shape up and like to really give you the idea of what I'm talking about, the biggest 4 pillars that like we talked are, first are our municipalities, and like they are similar, then they're similar. So please reach out, like whether reach out to us, like I'll be reaching out to you. So let's help each other out to solve these problems. The second are our vendor partners. I always feel, because I have worked in, I've been on the other side. I've worked with IBM for like good 5 to 10 years. So I have been on the other side selling the products to government as well as non-governmental agencies. So I know how I have been there when I've been on the other side of the table. So I believe that like this vendor partnership, to have the right vendor partners in helping you in your municipality would be of a great help to you. And the third are the not-for-profit ones, where there are a lot of governmental agencies, like, and I think that differ to municipality to municipality, but let's reach out to them, talk to them. And once you have these kind of conversations, I think the solutions or the partnerships, how the partnerships will evolve will come out during these conversations. I think having those conversations with these people is important, and let them suggest, let them guide you which way you want to go in. Then last but not the least are the college and universities. Like you cannot really leave the future residents out of the picture when you are talking about whether it is a smart city or the cities of the future or intelligent communities. Whenever you talk about this, the opinion and their thought process, how they are going to use that particular service or like anything in the municipality is very important. So we need to reach out to those. So that is what I thought, like I would bring it when Steve came to me and said like, okay, what are the topics that like you're passionate about talking? I thought like this collaboration one, this partnerships and working in that ecosystem, which I'm really passionate about. Because when I tell my daughter sharing is caring, I really mean it, because like it really makes sense, because I'm more than happy to take something who has already done it and customize it and put it in my environment rather than building from scratch. So those are my thoughts, but like the panel that is coming in next will add more depth into it, and like they'll have a greater content to really talk about how this has worked for them. So with that, it is my pleasure to introduce the moderator of the Common Ground or Partnership panel. I hope I have given them some things to talk about. The moderator is Hanif Muwaji. He's the VP and Worldwide Manager Commercial for AMD. He's had 15 years of experience in the business and promotes the benefits of AMD technology as a choice to enable competitive infrastructure. Over to you, Hanif.
Hi, everybody. My name is Hanif Muwaji. I manage AMD's data center business globally. And you know, I just think that it's real important for us to be a part of Technicity. The collaborative nature of this group, you know, representing both government and the private sector is truly important, especially at times like we're going through today. The more brain power we have, the more collaboration definitely leads us into a much brighter path into the future as well. Just a little bit about AMD. AMD is a global leader in compute technology. We build technology for the data center environment, gaming, consumer, and commercial markets. We power the world's largest supercomputers that focus on everything from weather mapping to the design and build of automobiles, and also powering some of the world's largest supercomputers, doing a lot of research with respect to finding a solution for COVID. So I'd like to lead into the panel and have the panel introduce themselves as well.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Sterling Lee. I'm a regional counselor for the town of Ajax and the region of Durham, and I've been in this role for 2 years. Before this, I worked for MP Holland as an advisor, and then before that, I actually had a bit of a tech life. Worked for Microsoft and Rogers, so a bit of both worlds combining right now in this panel, and looking forward to talking about it.
Hi, my name is Monica Yerushanik, and I'm the CEO at Ratio City. So we're an early stage prop tech startup based in Toronto. My background is actually architecture. I had been involved in the actual physical process of city building for my entire career. But I started Ratio City a few years back to create digital tools for professional city builders. So we sell to the commercial real estate space, so real estate developers, architects, urban planners, as well as municipalities. And essentially our tools allow our users to visualize urban data and then provide 3D analysis in real time.
My name is Adam Abernathy.
Everyone calls me Abe, and I am the Central Regional Director for MISA, the Municipal Information Systems Association. Prior to that, I spent a number of years as the Network Security Manager for the City of Oshawa. And before that, I did a lot more hacking and fun stuff with the armed forces. So that's my background, and I look forward to this exciting panel today.
I guess to bring up the pandemic and COVID-19, I guess the question that I really have for all of you is, do you feel that this has really accelerated a partnership, collaboration within various organizations from a private sector and from a public sector point of view?
If I may start, I definitely think it has. So listen, Ajax is, we're on the far east side of the GTA, and, we don't have the same advantages that Toronto, Hamilton have, being very close to kind of the tech center. So because of the pandemic and because no one is allowed to drive anywhere, we actually become on equal footing of setting up these meetings that we wouldn't normally be able to get because of distance, because of time. We can just set up these 1 hour Zoom video conference calls and start engaging kind of these partners more proactively. So in our very specific example, it's actually been very beneficial to us. I mean, under the circumstances, but in terms of just this reaching out and connecting with groups we wouldn't otherwise connect with, it's put us on equal footing.
I think what we're seeing a lot of is, again, this realization that we need to support a flexible workforce, that people need to be able to have the tools to work remotely, to work from home. And again, these are sort of general trends that have all of a sudden been super accelerated. And so how to think about the legacy systems that have been implemented in a lot of municipalities over the years that rely on, local servers and desktop computers and all the rest of it. And how do you make sure that your staff, is agile and can react, in these kinds of uncertain times, and what kind of tools would make their lives easier so that they can work from home, so that they can get access to the information that they need in order to continue to do their job, so that they can, engage with the community that they used to do, in person.
There were a lot of lessons learned, which is part of what happens when you go through something, right? So it's a lot easier to do your disaster planning, whether your disaster is a global pandemic or a small fire in a server room. It's a lot easier to plan your disaster when you've seen some disaster. So now that we've seen really big disaster, we've all gotten a little better at it.
So just wanted to get your perspectives in terms of what's the best way to partner with municipalities, and really trying to leverage the best solutions for both the municipalities, the public sector, and private business, and how do we become more collaborative from that point of view?
From a municipal point of view, we're absolutely open to partnering with the private sector to help achieve these key kind of strategic priorities. The town of Ajax, for example, has a strategic focus of innovation, technology, and how it relates to local development. I think the key thing we have to remember for municipalities, though, is that the private sector has to be a lot more flexible and patient with us if they want to work with us, because there are tons of procedures and policies that our staff have to work with within the confines to make things happen, so to speak. So issues like your competitive advantage and perceptions of favoritism, these are kind of points of concern for the public, let alone us. And so that can generally be offset by ensuring decisions are made and anticipated outcomes are open and transparent with residents. That's kind of the key thing is, we are a business that reports directly to the residents. And so we have to make sure that everything is accounted for and our T's are crossed and our I's are dotted.
As someone that's gone through that adventure a few times, not just a public-private partnership, but even a public-public partnership. For example, we had a lot of working sessions and knowledge sharing going on between the city of Oshawa, and actually Ajax was one of the very first attendees to these sessions, and Whitby and a lot of sort of geographically local people. And even still, we had a lot of interesting procedural hurdles to get over with that kind of stuff. So as soon as we mixed several cities together, even though we're all trying to solve the same security and data problems, we had an absolute nightmare just trying to expense a pizza to feed everybody at lunch. So that is, and that's real. Like that turns into, you don't want to fight that battle every month just to get everybody in the same room solving an actual real problem.
As we look at collaboration between municipalities, right? How do you leverage best practices from a policy point of view, and I guess what is the view in terms of getting a baseline in terms of what the security policies are, right? So kind of leveraging that best practice, getting to the baseline, and then how do you collaborate?
Ajax is a lower tier municipality, part of Durham region. And, one of the biggest knocks in Durham region was that we were always 8 municipalities in a region fighting amongst ourselves and not really working collaboratively. At least that was the perception before I got into politics of Durham region. Now it's very much changed. We realize in order to be competitive with Toronto, with Hamilton, with York, we have to start collaborating more. So one of the key things we're doing is we have like a regular information share, like Abe was referring to, of all the lakeshore municipalities, and we've created a Durham region economic development task force. So they meet regularly. We have buy-in from all the municipalities, and they meet and they collaborate and they share ideas, they share best practices. So whether it's the works, our IT, records and information management, we have all these separate groups within all the municipalities meeting together regularly to ensure that this is what's best for not only our individual municipalities, but for the region as a whole. Because that's the only way we can be competitive right now.
I'm still waiting for a former hacker to become one of the commissioners and one of the elected officials, so that we have less problems buying the pizza. That's the
next pizza's on me, Abe. I promise.
Fantastic.
Again, from my perspective, it's great to hear that there is this idea of sort of regional cooperation. And again, the way that we've been approaching collaboration with municipalities is to try to reduce the risk for everyone around the table, right? And so how can we, bite off a small piece? How can we do an initial pilot that, proves the thesis, that reduces the risk, for everyone, that is able to measure, some results. And so we had a pilot with the City of Toronto Urban Planning Department, for example. So we had a number of their users start to use our tools for a 6-month period. We set out some objectives and we checked in on a very regular basis. We were able to get some measurable impact.
What's really interesting is, we kind of look at this from a municipality point of view, but ultimately, it's multiple levels of government that are involved from a budgeting point of view, from a policy point of view as well, right? So what are some of the best practices in terms of partnering with different levels of government? I think Sterling and Abe, from your point of view.
I can definitely speak on the challenges part of your question of just with different levels of government, because ultimately it's even within the 8 municipalities in Durham region, we're all in the same business to kind of help our residents grow our own municipalities. But it's like we don't even speak the same language sometimes, in that different staffing levels for each municipality, different org structures. So it's like even finding the right person to be in these meetings can be difficult, and ensuring that time frames match up as well. But the opportunity ultimately is just it's the shared knowledge and capacity, and we have to put politics aside, which is important. And for this discussion is I can't always further the interests of Ajax solely when it comes to Durham region, because then I may be putting the other 7 behind, and it's really short gain. It's ultimately, sharing my knowledge, sharing capacity, and using political capital to achieve these kind of end goals.
There's almost no competing. Whitby has done some amazing things, and Dan Munz is the IT lead over there, and another one that they've brought up is their innovation, I shouldn't say little, their innovation cluster, which is, now you've got an actual line item and a branch, and, however it fits in your org chart, you've got a problem solving department, right? You've got Google's, what do they call theirs? The Google has one as well, whatever their name is, the moonshot division. You've got the dreaming and coming up with new ideas, and how do we get these monikers in at the table and solve these problems, whether it's geospatial or cybersecurity or whatever else, or policy at the elected level. And which to me, that's amazing and very forward leaning. And I'd love to see more of that. And once again, it's one of those 8 municipalities under the same umbrella is doing it. Why aren't we all? Why aren't we all comparing? Why aren't we all just throwing money into a bucket and fixing it all collaboratively, right? So that's interesting problems to solve.
For us, having that kind of a department does make our lives a little bit easier, because then they can also, tell us what the strategic objectives are. What does council actually want to see? What are the major problems that, the city has identified that they need to have solved? And again, if we know that our products can help solve that specific problem, it makes it easier to approach the right people in the right way.
If I could just quickly jump in too, it's, yeah, the idea of having the problem solver, the moonshot, so to speak, that department is brilliant. Of course, it's very forward thinking. But again, I have to justify this cost to the constituency. And a lot of times people who sometimes treat Ajax as a bedroom community, and I work in Toronto, why is my property tax going up just because you want someone to identify problems? And they're not supposed to. That's our job as politicians. But it's also, we have to sell this vision to our constituency, and that ultimately comes with costs absorbed with it as well. And that requires them to, accept this vision that we have for, a municipal, collaboration.
From a high level or critical thought point of view, what's one partnership idea that each one of you would have to help move the process along, right? What's the best practice that you would look at that would help organizations such as yours, Monica, to Sterling and Abe in terms of what's a great tip in terms of collaboration? What could we be doing better?
I think what we've found is once we've got an internal champion, at whichever department we've identified, sort of has a problem that we can help with, if that internal champion, has the confidence to sort of go outside the traditional procurement process, again, set up a limited sandbox for a pilot project. It's a way to be able to test things and test innovations that, may not be fully formed, an idea might not be fully formed. You can break it down into a few components, parts, and be able to test it. You can then be able to measure results and go back and say, hey, you know what, this little project worked. It didn't cost too much. It didn't involve too much risk. Now that we've got this proof point, let's go back and expand it. And I think that's one way to think about, integrating innovation into some of these departments that are otherwise really constrained by current processes.
From a municipal point of view, I think these partnerships are kind of just best when, expectations are really clear and spelled out, and hopefully in a written document of some sort, because we will always refer back to that document. But in terms of just like what's the one tip we can offer, it's just continue to build the personal network. But the one piece of advice, again, I can't stress enough, is be patient and flexible because, we are coming out of this infancy and we're coming at a really breakneck speed. And we have to, again, make sure we do everything with due diligence properly. So just be patient with the municipalities is probably the most important tip I can give.
Everyone on this panel has seen enough of both the ideal side and the practical implementation side of some of these things. And so the actual practical implementation, a lot of the times, of some of these public-private partnerships does have a fair number of challenges. And ideally, if I were to wave a magic wand and have all of my problems solved, I think it would be with a lot more shrewd up guidance on what I can do and what I can't do. But I think that kind of a guidance, even if it started at a regional level or even just a geographic cluster that gets together and says, hey, here's some policy and some guideline, and we're all going to agree with this. We're going to agree to selling this to our constituents, and it's got weight, traction in all directions now. Okay, now we can bring in these startups and do really awesome whatever 2021 brings. It's almost scary, but let's go with 2040 just to look way down the future. Whatever 2040 brings, then hopefully we can roll that out really nice and smoothly, and nobody's gambling, nobody's fighting their own currents. I think that would be really, really ideal, at least from the internal side of the municipal staff side. So I think that would be fantastic, and I'd love to see something like that. So if I could wave a wand, that would be the wand I would wave.
Well, hey, I do have to say that, as having the conversation today with all of you, I'm just really impressed by the thought leadership that all of you have brought to the table, the collaboration, and I think Canada has a great opportunity from a municipality point of view, a private public partnership to just innovate. So I want to thank all of you for being part of this panel. Really impressed by the leadership on this panel as well, and I think it's going to be a big benefit for the public and private sector moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for the interesting conversation. I mean, lots to think about there. The fact that no organization can go it alone is a theme that we repeatedly hear. Moving ahead, When organizations across the globe were forced to shift how they worked overnight, most companies made a Herculean effort to adapt. Very quickly, kitchens became boardrooms and collaboration tools became lifelines. The response helped organizations stay afloat, but the unceasing flood of meetings and video conference has led to burnout for those who haven't been careful. Microsoft has given this a lot of thought, and here to share some of the ways organizations can use analytics to help harmonize well-being with productivity is Jason Bromett, Microsoft's head of modern workplace and security.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Technicity GTA. My name is Jason Bromett, and I lead the modern work and security business at Microsoft Canada. I'm really excited to join the conference today. Hopefully you've had a great start to the afternoon, as well as this morning. I'm hoping to share a little bit with you over the next 15 minutes or so how we can collectively harness insights to drive employee well-being. And in the times that we're living today, change is being redefined. We're all used to change, regardless of what industry we're in, what size of organization or agency we may operate. But volatility has become the new norm, from climate change, obviously now to the pandemics, the speed with which we need to respond and react, and in many ways start to think about recovery are more important than ever before. Of course, one of the biggest movements right now is this notion of remote work, or frankly, remote everything, whether that be delivery of citizen services, obviously keeping your employees connected to your agency and to your fellow staff. This is the new norm. Today, we think about it as remote work. It's really this future of what we believe to be hybrid work. But what's been fascinating through this, and one of the biggest learnings, is even when we aren't watching closely, people can do their best work, and we can trust them to do that. That being said, leaders, as we've talked to customers across Canada and government agencies of all shapes and all sizes, it's not this notion of whether our people can be productive, but it's about whether they're working in sustainable ways. When we look at some of the trends that are driving transformation in government, and I'm not going to go through these in great detail because I know many of the participants today know this deeply, but it's a long list and it's a complex list, from people challenges and how do we think about modernizing and redesigning service delivery in a world where everyone is remote, to this idea, which is how do I use new technology to advance the services that I'm delivering and open up transparency to our constituents and the citizens in our communities. But it's also about how do we use data and insights to transform the way that we operate government. But when you think about all of those trends, there is a common theme that runs all the way through this, which is it's powered by people. And it's this idea that says, how does technology amplify human ingenuity? And yes, there's a lot of discussion and a lot of debate of, does technology ultimately replace humans? In some cases and in highly repeatable tasks, perhaps. But this idea that says, how do we amplify human ingenuity with people at the core? Any organization that I talk to, again, whether public sector or private, if you ask, and I'm sure each of you can reflect on this, that says, what is your most important asset? The vast majority will always say your people. And this quote was one that was shared a few weeks ago with me, and I've shared it with a number of customers as we've kind of gone through a host of discussions through this pandemic and really sharing the experience that we've had as Microsoft, but more importantly is learning from our customers and what they're living through. And while not public sector specific, I thought it was super poignant. And it's this idea that says, no matter what business I'm in, it's about my people. My company or my agency or my government lives and dies by them. And that is the new paradigm in which we are living today, which is how do we take care of our people to continue to enable us to thrive, succeed, and ultimately respond as we look forward, hopefully, to the end of the pandemic that we're currently living in. There's this idea of the new world of work. And again, this can be defined and looked at in so many different ways. And we'll each personally have our own experiences. I sit here today, obviously in my home office, lots of snow, thinking about how do I keep connected to my team and to my organization? How do I empower our people to continue to get the work done that we need to get done? But it's also about how do I protect my well-being? And so as you look at these points on this slide, I think you'll all relate. This idea, which is after hours work, which is the days have expanded. There's no question about that. There's also this idea that says the boundaries of work and life are harder to define and harder to keep a tab on. This idea that says we're always on. There's also this reality called collaboration fatigue, as we talk about it, call it Zoom fatigue in some cases. Obviously, we're here today on Teams. But this idea that says we are spending so much time on video and in front of our computers is mentally challenging, and it places stress that is different. No longer do we have sort of the social equity and capital that we were so used to around the water cooler. And so this idea of how do we connect with one another has changed dramatically. On the other side of that is this reality that is probably most concerning in many ways for many leaders, certainly HR leaders that I've had a chance to speak to over the last number of weeks and months, this idea of social isolation. How do we ensure that our people are connected to the organization from the boardroom right through to the front line? We need to think differently about how might we embrace and create environments where people can be their best, where they can bring their best, but is also super inclusive for this new world of work in which we're operating. I thought these two quotes, shared certainly by Microsoft leaders, again, just sort of reinforce this reality. And Kathleen, who is our Chief People Officer, this idea that says when employees are empowered with data to make decisions that affect their future success, job satisfaction improves, productivity improves, and creativity thrives. And then this quote from Satya that I also think is really interesting. And again, we can all as individuals relate to this, and as managers and as leaders certainly can relate to this, which is the most valuable thing we have is our time. We should make sure that we give people a sense of how they are spending their time so that they can be more in control. And so this idea of insights and empowerment for our people as a platform to drive growth, prosperity, and in many ways, resiliency. And so when we think about this time in which we're living, this era of volatility, this notion of harnessing knowledge and insights to empower people to act quick and respond creates this notion of, I'll call it resiliency. And whether that's a resilient company, a resilient agency, or government, or health institution, it doesn't really matter. We're all living in this world where we need to adapt at a speed that we haven't been traditionally accustomed to. And many of us have heard the quotes, which is a year's worth of transformation in a month, 2 years in 2 months. Lots of different points of view that says the speed with which we're having to respond, the capabilities that we ultimately need to deliver, those that were nice to have become table stakes and requirements. And so this idea of organizational resiliency, and again, I'm not going to go through these questions, but as we think about sort of these 3 stages, and we can debate as individuals and as leaders, where do we live on this continuum today in Ontario and in the GTA? As a resident myself, I'm certainly watching what's happening, what's going around us. This idea of response, recovery, and reimagine, 3 logical phases. And today, I don't think any of us have crystal balls to say when will we hit those phases and when might we actually have to take a step back, as we've recently had to do. But this idea that says in response, understanding where do we have risks of burnout? As we think about recovery, where do we look for groups that are interdependent and may need more co-location? But it's also about how do we reimagine, which is the things that we used to do, how do we think about them differently given everything that we've lived through and everything that we've learned? It's about guidance and not guidelines. And this may be, I'll say, politically challenged, because again, a hot topic. But we as leaders can do a great job in setting guidance for our people and for our organizations and our agencies to empower them to be their best. How do we create great frames around teamwork and think about the changes in the workplace, and how do we enable people to adapt and thrive? It's also our platform to ask really important questions. How do you go and create an environment that is collaborative for both remote and on-site experiences? Again, recognizing hybrid is this new world of work that we're going to be in. Do we have sets of predictable workflows and processes that are still manual that we may have an opportunity to digitize and transform as we think about emerging from the backside of this pandemic and perhaps preparing for what might be ahead? But it's also about creating the right environment. And these statistics that you'll see on this slide kind of come back to the comments that I made, which is our brains are having a hard time processing the volume of video meetings that we're in and just that video feed. But it's also this reality that says we need to change the way that we're working. And so we've got a great opportunity to come together on that. And then, of course, as an employee of Microsoft, I can't not say it's about choosing the right tools. And so whether it be Microsoft Teams to enable that hub for teamwork and remote work, to analytics, which we'll spend a little bit of time on, and then certainly through to automation. We think about this as workplace insights, and we do think about it on two dimensions, which is what's the personal perspective that I as an individual can be empowered with to drive focus and well-being in my own personal time. But it's also about us as managers and leaders to say, how do I look at it more holistically across my organization? And we generally think about this in sort of four categories, which is how do we empower the individual? How might we empower the manager? How might we empower the leader? And then, of course, empowering IT. When we look at my analytics, which is the personal perspective, this notion of bringing insights directly into the flow of work that you're in, to really inspire people to think differently about how they can be both productive, but also create a platform and space to own their own well-being. And so whether you're operating in the web or you operate directly in Outlook, we bring those experiences in. And so this notion of focus plan and the idea of being able to create space in your calendar to dedicate to the things that are important. This ability to surface insights to remind you and guide you on how you spend your day and to take breaks, to get up and move and to walk. These ideas that in many ways we were frankly fortunate of. Being in an office, we had to walk from meeting room to meeting room, or we would wander down the hall, we'd run into people and we'd have that sort of social experience that created that social capital. Today, we need some prompts because it's easy to get lost in what we're doing. And so as you think about these idea of insights, what we really want to do is bring those personal insights directly into the tools in which our people are working. And so this idea of staying in the flow. And so here you can just see some of the work that we're doing around bringing insights into Teams as that platform or that hub for teamwork from Microsoft. And there's a couple pieces that I'll touch on here that are kind of fun. This idea of Headspace, partnering with Headspace directly to bring meditation, guided meditation directly into the Teams experience. But also this idea of introducing the virtual commute. Research has told us as we've lived through and watched many countries live through this pandemic, which is the time that we had in the morning and at the end of the day were highly beneficial to us as individuals. It was our ability to get ourselves into the mental space to prepare for our day, but it was also our chance to wind down for the day. And that's now been lost. And so this idea of how do you actually infuse some of those same notions to create experiences that enable us to be our best. But it's also about using technology like artificial intelligence to look at how we're working and the commitments that we're making to make recommendations around tasks to help us be more productive. And again, stay in the flow while also maintaining our well-being. It's not just about the person or the individual, it's about how do we empower managers to be able to use those insights to take action, to recommend and provide guidance to them on how might they partner with their team to ensure that they too are protecting their well-being. And so you can see on these slides a couple of examples. We're really starting to look at one, research-based recommendations and insights, partnering across industry to say, hey, when we look at employee burnout, what are some of the factors in a highly anonymized way, so security and privacy built in, that says, how are your people working? And how does that look relative to teams that are similar in construct and in size? And then how do we make recommendations that empower your people to get back time in their lives? We all, again, going back to that quote from Satya, the most valuable thing we have is our time. And again, it's about the individual, it's about the manager, but it's also about the leader, each of us, which is how do we use these same insights to guide our organization in its entirety forward? Which is, are our people spending enough time with their managers? Are we building those connections? Do we understand the interconnectedness of our people and our teams to say, hey, do we have the right people working together in this moment of time to tackle what are our most pressing challenges and our amazing opportunities? And so this balance of insights that fuel both the personal ownership and accountability, to take care of our own personal well-being, but creating a construct that enables managers and leaders to be great coaches, again, based on insights, highly anonymized, to understand how your people are working and interacting. And so as I wrap up, this notion of using insights to empower well-being is something we as leaders need to embrace more today than ever before. And so I've given you a couple of options on this slide. Please do reach out to us, any member of the Microsoft team. We'd love to have a conversation with you. But again, it's an incredible opportunity in this world of remote everything. How do we use insights to drive both our personal and our organizational well-being? Thanks so much for joining the session, and enjoy the rest of Technicity.
That was really good, Jason. So now it's time for a look at the last of the Leading the Charge panels. This one comes from the town of Orangeville, where they pivoted one AI camera project under trial and applied it to another to help in the battle against COVID-19. Please roll the video.
In 2019, the number of active Internet of Things devices reached more than 26 billion, and every second, 127 new IoT devices are connected to the web. By 2021, experts think there will be 35 billion IoT devices installed worldwide. There are multiple factors contributing to an increasingly connected world, perhaps none more influential than the COVID-19 pandemic that shuttered brick-and-mortar businesses and ushered in the remote work era. The city of Orangeville was already in the midst of an impressive digital transformation, partnering with tech firm Iris R&D Group to detect potholes on roads with smart cameras. Andrew McKinney, General Manager of Corporate Services with the town of Orangeville, says the pandemic forced the municipality to think quickly on its feet and address public concerns about public spaces and possible crowding.
So we reached out to Iris to talk about the capability of their tools, pivoting from hard surfaces to support more of the community-based programming in the softer side. Because there was a lot of conversation about how and when we could reopen the garden because it allows people access to local food source. There was a lot of discussion about kids not being able to participate in the active spaces that they had previously because they had to be closed. So we worked with Iris to understand whether we could change the original use cases to instead focus on what is effectively a high-powered people counter to understand when we have too many people together in a public space or if they are too close together.
The town of Orangeville is not the only municipality turning to technological solutions to solve new problems. Iris R&D Group co-founder and COO David Keeney says the firm issued a survey across Canada earlier this year seeking input from municipalities. The message was clear. Technology wasn't being used enough or effectively across all departments. David says municipalities Iris has worked with are attracted to software that can be applied in multiple ways.
Our software solution is not only gathering data for cities to use as they go forward, managing their assets like road problems, potholes, cracks, but also right-of-way assets like signs, trees, mailboxes, things like that, garbage set out. We developed not just a means by way to collect the data with a hardware solution that's much more robust than a standard cell phone that some of our competitors use. It's a device that picks up information without collecting any private information whatsoever. No faces are ever collected.
For Kinney, that's music to her ears. Once the pivot from monitoring potholes to people was made, another challenging task remained, making sure people understood what exactly the cameras were doing.
We didn't do a public consultation proactively. We brought to council the concept. What we did was we made sure we had the appropriate signage. Everything is processed at the edge, and so the town never sees anyone. All we see is if too many people are together, an image is taken and there are red boxes and everything inside the red boxes are blurred out.
Since the project entered the pilot phase in July, McKinney says the town has received 150 notifications about clusters of people forming at the local skate park and garden park. And then, within a very short period of time, what often happens is that town officials get a notice saying that foot traffic has gone back down.
just knowing that the camera's there has changed people's behaviors. So it's been a positive experience, and our goal has always been education and just ensuring that public health and safety guidelines are being followed. So we consider it a win.
What a great time for citizens like myself to be living in the GTA. I mean, awesome stuff. Now we're going to move into the part of the program where you get to have your say, the town hall. Click the link on the messenger or the button on the platform below, and we'll go into the Teams platform where my colleague, Jim Love, is waiting for us. If you don't have Teams installed, you might get a slide like this. Choose the Continue with Browser option. Jim will lead an open discussion on what we've heard today with the goal of creating a roadmap document for the next phase of municipal innovation. We're hoping that a lot of you may want to speak, and if so, we ask for your engagement and your patience. So much like a live event, raise your virtual hand. You can find it in the toolbar, and one of our team will run a virtual mic to you. If we're able to get to you, we will unmute you, and then please turn on your video and you'll have the floor. We know everyone has a lot to say, so please keep your comments or questions brief so we can get to as many people as possible. See you in the town hall.